Before I start the story, I want to tell you to subscribe, because only 2% are subscribers, and at 1,000 subscribers, I will post a special video. In the shadowed craters of Kryan 4, a planet as uninviting and desolate as a soul in despair, lay the twisted wreckage of a scout ship. Its hull, once gleaming with the insignia of the Galactic Rangers, was now marred by scorch marks and debris. Among the wreckage, under a flickering emergency beacon, was Vara. Once a ranger celebrated for her agility and combat skills, she now lay motionless, blood seeping from her wounds, her breath shallow and labored. The day had started like any other, with routine patrols along the outer sectors. But today was different. An unexpected meteor shower had turned a simple mission into a nightmare of dodging lethal projectiles. Vara's ship, the Swift Talon, took a critical hit. The last thing she remembered before losing consciousness was the blaring sirens and the spiral dive towards the unforgiving ground of Kryan 4. When she came to, the pain was immense. Her left leg was badly injured, and her comms device was destroyed. Vara knew her chances of survival were slim. The Galactic Rangers could handle harsh conditions, but Kryan 4 was known for its hostile environment, and even more hostile creatures. As the hours passed, Vara dragged herself to the relative safety of a rock overhang. It was not much, but it provided minimal shelter against the planet's harsh winds and piercing cold. Her survival training kicked in. She managed to bandage her wounds with strips torn from her uniform and collected some icy water dripping from a stalactite. Nightfall on Kryan 4 brought with it the cries of distant creatures and the eerie glow of phosphorescent fungi. Vara, shivering and in pain, couldn't help but think of her family and friends. Would they ever know what happened to her? The thought was a sharp sting to her already battered heart. Then something miraculous occurred. Amidst the howls and the whispering winds, a figure approached. Vara tensed, her training preparing her for a possible threat. However, the figure was not one of Kryan 4's monstrous inhabitants, but a human. He was tall, his figure silhouetted against the dim light of the planet's twin moons. His approach was cautious, his hands raised to show he meant no harm. Vara's initial instinct was distrust. Interactions between Galactic Rangers and humans were rare and often fraught with tension. But stranded, wounded, and abandoned, she was out of options. The human knelt beside her, his face etched with concern. He spoke softly, his voice a calming presence in the chaotic wilderness. "I'm here to help," he said, revealing a medkit. His hands were steady as he began to treat her injuries. Vara, overwhelmed by the pain and the unexpected kindness, found herself slipping into unconsciousness, trusting this stranger with her life. As she drifted off, she wondered how this human had found her in such a forsaken place. What drove him to help her, and what would this strange twist of fate bring for both of their futures? In the cold alien night, under the watchful eyes of a distant galaxy, their unlikely alliance began. The start of a story neither of them could have anticipated. Vara awoke to a strange calmness, an odd sensation given the events that had unfolded. Her eyes adjusted to the dim light of the sheltered enclave as she scanned her surroundings. The human, whom she now noticed, had a rugged appearance with deep-set eyes shadowed by a heavy brow, was preparing a meal over a small, efficient cooker that hummed quietly. He noticed her stirring and offered a cautious smile. "You're awake. How do you feel?" he asked, his tone implying genuine concern. "Better than expected," Vara replied, testing her voice. It was hoarse, a reminder of the dehydration she suffered. She attempted to sit up, pain shooting through her body like a meteor streaking across the sky. "Take it slow. You had some pretty bad injuries, but I managed to patch you up best I could," he said, handing her a container filled with a nutrient-rich broth. She accepted it, her survival instincts still sharp. "Why are you helping me?" she asked directly, her eyes not leaving his as she sipped the warm liquid. "I couldn't just leave you there," he answered, turning back to his cooking. "No one deserves to die alone on a rock like this." His answer was simple, yet it resonated deeply with Vara. She had been prepared to face her end alone in the cold expanse of Kryan 4. His intervention, his mere presence, was an anomaly in her often solitary existence as a ranger. "Do you have a name?" Vera asked, breaking the lingering silence. Milo, he responded without looking at her. I'm a researcher. I was studying the flora and fauna of this planet when I found your ship. Milo's story added layers to his character. Kryan 4 was not a place for the faint-hearted. Its allure was not in beauty or hospitality, but in its challenges and mysteries. For someone like Milo to choose to be here, it spoke of a resilience that Vera respected. As the days melded into each other, Vera's strength began to return, aided by Milo's care and the supplies he had scavenged from the remnants of her ship. They worked together to reinforce the shelter, turning it from a makeshift haven into a sturdy base. The partnership was quiet, more out of necessity than choice, as both were wary of the vulnerabilities that trust could expose. Milo proved to be an adept survivor, his knowledge of Kryan 4's harsh ecosystem, allowing them to navigate and utilize the planet's scarce resources. Vera, in turn, shared her tactical training from the Rangers, teaching Milo defensive maneuvers and the best practices in emergency field aid. Their conversations remained mostly pragmatic, focused on survival and plans for rescue. However, as they sat by the fire one evening, the barrier of mere coexistence began to crack. Milo shared stories of Earth, of vast oceans and towering mountains, so different from the barren landscape of Kryan 4. Vera listened, intrigued by his descriptions of a world she had never seen. Her life had been spent traversing galaxies, planets more about strategic importance than beauty or wonder. Milo's tales brought a flicker of curiosity, a desire to see these wonders for herself. "Why choose to come here, to Kryan 4?" Vera finally asked, her voice tinged with a newfound softness. "What's worth the solitude and danger?" Milo looked into the fire, his face illuminated by its dance. "Discovery," he said simply. "To see what no one else has seen, to learn what is not yet known. There's a thrill in that, don't you think?" Vera nodded, understanding his sentiment. There was a thrill in the unknown, a pull that had guided her own path as a ranger. Yet here with Milo, she saw another aspect of exploration, not just the land and its secrets, but the human element, the connections that could be formed in the most unlikely of circumstances. Their mutual respect deepened with the exchange, the foundation of their alliance solidifying. They were no longer just two survivors, but partners in the truest sense of the word, their skills complementary, their survival intertwined. As they planned their next moves, the idea of leaving the planet together began to take shape. Vera knew that if they were to have any chance of escaping Kryan 4, Milo's knowledge of the terrain combined with her navigation skills would be crucial. It was a formidable task, yet for the first time since her crash, hope flickered within her like the fire before them, promising warmth and, perhaps, a path forward. With a plan gradually forming, Vera and Milo set out to gather the necessary components to construct a distress beacon. Their daily excursions took them further from the safety of the camp, each journey marked by the careful navigation of Kryan 4's treacherous terrain. The planet seemed to be in a constant state of flux, with ground fissures and sudden geothermal vents posing as much of a threat as its predatory fauna. Milo's expertise in xenobiology proved invaluable, helping them avoid the most dangerous creatures and even utilizing some of the planet's toxic plants to their advantage. Vera, on the other hand, handled the technical aspects of their mission. Her familiarity with Ranger tech allowed her to conceptualize a beacon that could transmit a distress signal strong enough to breach the planet's dense ionosphere. As they worked, their reliance on each other grew, solidifying a bond that was based on mutual respect and a shared goal. One evening, as they sat examining a map of the region, Milo pointed to a series of unexplored caverns that could potentially house the rare minerals needed for their beacon. "These caverns are about a day's trek from here," Milo explained, tracing the path with his finger. "They're not documented in any of my data, but my sensors detected unusual electromagnetic signatures, which could be indicative of the minerals we need." Vera studied the map closely, her mind working through the logistics. "It's risky. We don't know what's out there, and if we run into trouble, there's no backup." "I know," Milo agreed, "but it's our best shot. Without those minerals, we won't be able to boost the beacon's signal." They set out at dawn the next day, equipped with supplies and the hope that this venture would bring them closer to rescue. The trek was grueling, the landscape around the caverns more barren and alien than any they had previously encountered. The sky was a perpetual twilight, casting long shadows and giving the illusion of movement in every rock formation. Upon reaching the caverns, the real work began. The caves were deep, their walls shimmering with crystalline deposits. Milo's equipment buzzed excitedly as they ventured further, indicating they were on the right track. As they collected the necessary minerals, a low rumble echoed through the cavern. Vera's instincts kicked in, and she signaled to Milo to be on high alert. The rumble grew louder, and suddenly a swarm of rock-like creatures emerged from the walls, disturbed by the intruders. Milo and Vara backed into a defensive position, Vara's hand on her blaster. "Looks like the cavern doesn't want to give up its treasures without a fight," she said, her voice calm but alert. Milo nodded, his focus on the creatures as he quickly rummaged through his bag for something useful. He pulled out a device and clicked it on, emitting a high-frequency sound that seemed to disorient the creatures. They paused, confused, allowing Milo and Vara enough time to make a strategic retreat, minerals in hand. Back at the camp, their success was tempered by the realization of how close they had come to disaster. As they worked on the beacon, their conversation turned to plans for the future, a future that seemed a bit more tangible with each passing day. They had faced many challenges together, but now, more than ever, they felt prepared to face whatever else Kryan 4, or the galaxy, had in store for them. With the critical minerals secured and their beacon nearly complete, Vara and Milo focused on the final assembly. The beacon, a testament to their combined efforts, stood as a beacon of hope, a sleek metallic structure adorned with scavenged components and infused with the rare minerals from the caverns. It was not only a call for rescue, but a symbol of their resilience. As Milo worked on calibrating the signal, Vara scouted the perimeter, ensuring that no predatory creatures were lurking nearby. Her gaze often drifted to the skies, dark and brooding, as if challenging them to break its secrets. She felt a mix of anticipation and anxiety, a longing for rescue intertwined with the uncertainty of leaving this hostile yet transformative planet. The moment of truth arrived as they activated the beacon. A high-pitched whir turned into a steady hum as the signal pierced the atmosphere, cutting through the celestial noise. They watched, almost holding their breath, as the beacon's lights flickered and then stabilized, a sign that it was transmitting. "Now we wait," Milo said, his voice carrying a mix of fatigue and relief. Vara nodded, sitting back against the rugged terrain. "It could be days or longer," she mused aloud, her eyes scanning the horizon. The wait was agonizing. Each day stretched long, filled with routine checks on the beacon and their dwindling supplies. They continued to fortify their camp, but their conversations often drifted to what they would do once they were rescued. Despite the camaraderie that had grown between them, they both knew that their paths might diverge once they returned to civilization. During one of their evening discussions, as they shared a meal by the fire, a faint noise caught Vera's attention. She held up a hand, signaling Milo to be quiet. Listening intently, she could hear it, a distant, almost imperceptible rumble. "Something's coming," she said, reaching for her blaster. Milo looked concerned, but he trusted her senses. They extinguished the fire and took cover, watching as the sky began to brighten unexpectedly. A ship, its design unfamiliar and sleek, pierced through the clouds, its descent rapid and purposeful. It was not a galactic ranger ship, but it was clearly here for them. As the ship landed, Vara and Milo approached cautiously. The hatch opened, revealing not a rescue team, but a single figure, another human clad in a uniform neither of them recognized. He stepped down, his eyes locking onto Milo first, then Vara. "I am Commander Rix, of the Constellar Authority," he announced, his voice authoritative yet not unfriendly. "We received your distress signal. It seems you have quite the survival story." Vara and Milo exchanged a glance. This was not the rescue they had expected, but it was rescue nonetheless. As they boarded the ship, Vara felt a twinge of sadness at leaving the planet that had tested them to their limits. As the ship ascended, Leaving Kryan 4 behind, Vera looked at Milo, realizing that this experience had changed her in ways she had never anticipated. They had survived, but more than that, they had learned the value of unexpected alliances and the strength that comes from facing adversity together. As the ship cut through the cosmos, Vara and Milo found themselves under the scrutiny of Commander Rix and his crew. They were given a small cabin to share, a space filled with the soft hum of the ship's engines and the occasional distant clanks of a vessel in motion. The cabin, while utilitarian, was a stark contrast to the rugged conditions of Kryan 4. Commander Rix invited them to the ship's common area, a sleek room with views of the star-streaked space outside. He was curious about their survival, asking detailed questions about their time on the planet, their strategies, and the challenges they faced. Vara answered with cautious honesty, aware that each detail could be crucial for future missions, or for understanding their rescuers' intentions. Milo, meanwhile, seemed intrigued by the technology aboard the ship. He questioned Rix about the advancements and the operations of such a vessel, which seemed far beyond what was typical even for a researcher of his caliber. Rix, in turn, was surprisingly forthcoming, explaining that they were part of an exploratory division looking to expand human understanding of habitable zones in uncharted sectors. As days passed in transit, the initial relief of rescue gave way to a growing unease. Vara felt the weight of uncertainty about their destination and future. She found herself staring out at the passing stars, her thoughts drifting back to the planet they had left behind. One evening, as she gazed out the viewport, Milo joined her. "It's hard to believe we're actually off that rock," he said softly. Vera nodded. "It feels like we've traded one unknown for another," she replied. Their conversation was interrupted by Commander Rix, who appeared in the doorway with a slight smile. "We're approaching our destination," he announced. "There's someone who wants to meet with you both." Curious and slightly apprehensive, Vera and Milo followed Rix to a large observation deck, where a woman stood looking out at the approaching space station. She was dressed in a high-ranking officer's uniform, her posture one of command and poise. "Vera, Milo, this is Admiral Saren," Rix introduced. "She's the head of the Constellar Authority's Exploratory Division." Admiral Saren turned to face them, her eyes sharp but not unkind. "I've been briefed about your ordeal. It's impressive how you managed to survive, and how you utilized your surroundings to do so." Vara and Milo exchanged a glance, sensing the gravity of the moment. Saren continued, "Your skills and resourcefulness are exactly what we need. I'd like to offer you positions within our division. There's a lot to explore, and we could use people with your experience." The offer took them by surprise. Vara, who had expected to return to the Rangers, felt a thrill at the prospect of new adventures, but also a pang of loyalty to her former post. Milo looked equally torn, his desire for discovery battling with his need for a less perilous existence. As they left the observation deck, Vera turned to Milo. "What do you think?" she asked. Milo sighed, looking back at the space station growing larger in their view. "It's a lot to take in, but maybe this is the continuation we need, new horizons, not just survival." Vera nodded, feeling the weight of the decision. They had found strength and reliance in each other's company, a bond forged in the fires of adversity. Now, the universe was offering them a path to continue that journey together, not just as survivors, but as pioneers. Vera and Milo spent the next few days aboard the space station, adapting to their new environment and considering Admiral Saren's offer. The station was a hub of activity, a crossroads for explorers, scientists, and traders from across the galaxy. Its vast corridors buzzed with languages and species Vera had only read about in mission briefings, each individual as unique as the last star in the universe. They were given access to the station's facilities, including its expansive library of galactic archives and the latest in astronavigation technology. Milo immersed himself in the scientific databases, his mind alight with the potential of contributing to uncharted exploratory missions. Vara, however, took to training with the station's security personnel, honing her combat skills and learning about the advanced weaponry and defense systems. One afternoon, while exploring the outer modules of the station, Vara found herself overlooking the docking bays where ships of all sizes and designs were moored. Among them, she recognized the sleek lines of scout ships similar to her destroyed vessel, a sight that brought back a pang of nostalgia and loss. Milo joined her, his eyes following her gaze. "Thinking about the Swift Talon?" he guessed, his voice low. "Yeah," she admitted, her voice tinged with a sadness she hadn't expected to feel so strongly. "Part of me misses it, the simplicity of a mission, the clarity of purpose." Milo nodded, understanding her sentiment. "Here things seem more complex, more open-ended, but maybe that's not a bad thing," he suggested. They discussed their options long into the space station's artificial night. The promise of exploration was enticing to Milo, while Vara was drawn to the possibility of defending and aiding exploratory teams in hostile environments. Their decision was made the next morning when they met with Admiral Saren again. They agreed to join the Constellar Authority, but on their terms. Vara would lead a rapid response team, designed to provide support and security for missions that ventured into dangerous territories. Milo would head a research team, focusing on the ecological and biological studies of new worlds. Admiral Saren approved of their roles, pleased with their proactive approach. "You'll be an invaluable asset to our division," she affirmed, her eyes reflecting the strategic importance of their inclusion. As Vara and Milo left the meeting, they felt a renewed sense of purpose. The station, once a maze of unfamiliar faces and technology, began to feel like a new base of operations, a place from which they could venture into the unknown, together. Their first mission brief arrived within days. They were to lead a joint operation to a newly discovered planet, reported to have both hostile conditions and immense scientific potential. As they prepared, Vara felt the familiar thrill of anticipation, the excitement of facing the unknown. This time, however, she was not alone. She had Milo by her side, and together they stepped into the briefing room, ready to chart a course into the unexplored, their skills complementing each other, their futures intertwined with the stars themselves. The newly discovered planet, designated as Veridia 9, loomed large on the main screen of their ship as Vara and Milo prepared their teams for descent. Veridia 9 was a world of dense jungles and vast oceans, teeming with life yet untouched by intelligent beings, or so the preliminary scans had indicated. Milo briefed his team of researchers on the unique flora and fauna signatures detected from orbit, emphasizing the need for caution and respect for the alien ecosystem. His team, a mix of biologists, ecologists, and xenologists, listened intently, their eyes alight with the thrill of discovery. Vara, meanwhile, addressed her security team, outlining potential threats and establishing protocols for encounters with hostile wildlife. Her team, composed of seasoned veterans and eager new recruits, nodded in understanding, their gear checked and rechecked for the mission ahead. As the ships descended through the thickening atmosphere of Veridia 9, Milo turned to Vara, a slight tension visible in his expression. "You ever think we'd end up here, leading missions like this?" he asked, his voice barely audible over the hum of the engines. Vara smiled, her eyes fixed on the verdant world below. "Honestly, it's still sinking in, but I'm glad we're doing this together," she responded, her grip tightening on the armrest as the ship began its final approach. The landing was smooth despite the swirling winds that buffeted their craft. As the hatch opened, a rush of humid air filled the cabin, carrying with it the sense of Veridia 9, a mixture of earth, alien vegetation, and the salty tang of distant oceans. The teams disembarked with precision, setting up a perimeter and beginning their initial surveys. Vara stayed close to Milo as his team collected samples, her eyes scanning the lush underbrush for movement. The planet was alive with sounds, the calls of unseen creatures and the rustle of leaves stirred by gentle breezes. Milo's excitement was palpable as he examined a series of plants with luminescent properties. These could be a new form of bioluminescence, possibly with applications in energy or medicine, he mused, carefully documenting his findings. As the day wore on, the planet revealed its secrets slowly. The researchers were ecstatic at the biodiversity, while Vera's team encountered several non-lethal but curious creatures, which they managed to avoid or deter without incident. As night fell on Veridia, the team regrouped at the campsite. The researchers shared their data, displaying images and samples of the day's finds, while Vera's team reported on the security protocols and the day's minor skirmishes with the local wildlife. Sitting around a makeshift campfire, the barrier between the two teams blurred as they shared stories and speculated about the wonders of Veridia 9. Vera and Milo looked on, a sense of pride filling them. They had not only survived their ordeal on Kryan 4, but had also forged a path that would allow them to explore and protect the mysteries of the universe. Their gaze met across the fire, a silent acknowledgement of their journey from survivors to leaders. Here on Veridia 9, under alien stars, they were pioneers on the threshold of new worlds, their destinies intertwined with the infinite expanse of space. As the mission on Veridia 9 progressed, the initial excitement of discovery began to mingle with the complexities of deep space exploration. Vera's team faced increasingly frequent encounters with the planet's predators, creatures adept at navigating the dense jungle terrain. Each encounter was a stark reminder of the dangers lurking beyond the camp's perimeter lights. Meanwhile, Milo's fascination with Veridia 9's ecosystems deepened as his team uncovered evidence of a possible sentient species, a series of structured markings and subtle manipulations of the environment that suggested intelligence. This revelation brought a new level of urgency to their research, compelling them to balance their scientific curiosity with the ethical implications of their presence on the planet. One evening, as Milo pored over the latest data with his team, Vera approached him, her expression serious. "We need to talk about increasing our security measures," she insisted, her voice tinged with concern. "The local wildlife is becoming bolder, and if your suspicions about a sentient species are correct, we might not be as welcome here as we thought." Milo looked up, his eyes weary yet bright with the thrill of potential discovery. "I know," he acknowledged. "I've been thinking about that too. Maybe it's time to set up a meeting with Admiral Saren. We need to discuss our findings and decide how to proceed with minimal impact." They arranged a secure communication link to the space station, and soon Admiral Saren's stern features filled the screen in their makeshift conference room. Vera and Milo presented their findings, highlighting the potential risks and the moral obligations they faced. Admiral Saren listened intently, her gaze flickering between Vera and Milo as they spoke. "Your mission has always been to explore and protect," she reminded them, "not to conquer. I trust you to make the right decisions on the ground, but remember, the universe doesn't revolve around us. We must tread lightly, respecting the ecosystems and potential societies we encounter." The communication ended with a heavy silence settling over the room. The weight of their responsibilities was palpable, a burden that they now carried together. In the following days, Milo's team shifted their focus to non-invasive methods of research, while Vera's team intensified their patrols, using drones and sensors to minimize direct encounters with the planet's wildlife. Their cautious approach seemed to calm the immediate tensions, and the creatures of Veridia 9 watched from the shadows, their eyes reflecting a cautious curiosity. One afternoon, as Vera patrolled the edge of a clearing, she spotted something unusual, a figure observing her from the distance, its form humanoid but covered in the vibrant foliage that characterized the planet. Her heart raced as she made eye contact, feeling an inexplicable sense of understanding pass between them. She slowly backed away, signaling to her team to lower their weapons. The figure remained still, then turned and disappeared into the dense jungle without a sound. Vera reported the encounter to Milo, her voice filled with awe. "I think they might be studying us just as we are studying them," she said, a mix of excitement and trepidation in her tone. Milo nodded thoughtfully. "Perhaps this is the first step towards a real understanding," he mused. "Not through conquest or domination, but through mutual respect and cautious interaction." As they prepared for the next phase of their mission, both Vera and Milo knew that the true test of their leadership had just begun. They were no longer merely visitors on Veridia 9. They were participants in a delicate dance of discovery and diplomacy, walking a line between shadow and light, revelation and responsibility. In the days that followed, the dynamic on Veridia 9 shifted. Vara's encounter with the humanoid figure sparked a series of indirect interactions that shaped the course of their mission. Each day brought subtle signs of the indigenous being's presence, carefully arranged symbols made from natural materials, and distant observations that were more curious than threatening. Milo's team adapted their research tactics further, employing techniques that allowed them to observe and document without disturbing the local ecosystems. They compiled comprehensive data that illuminated not only the biological diversity of Veridia 9, but also hinted at the sophisticated environmental stewardship practiced by its inhabitants. Meanwhile, Vera's security protocols evolved into a comprehensive coexistence strategy. Her team worked to minimize human impact and foster a safe environment for both the crew and the planet's native species. The tension that had once gripped her team eased, replaced by a sense of purpose and respect for their extraordinary hosts. As Veridia 9's dual suns set one evening, casting long shadows over the research camp, Admiral Saren's ship returned to orbit. She arrived at the camp the following morning, her arrival marked by a formal greeting that included both Vara and Milo, along with representatives from the indigenous population. It was a historic meeting, facilitated by gestures and translated through the universal language of respect and peaceful intent. Admiral Saren was profoundly affected by the interaction. This, she addressed her hosts and her team, represents the pinnacle of what we aspire to achieve as explorers. Not only have we discovered new life, but we have begun to understand the essence of diplomacy and mutual respect. The agreement that followed was carefully crafted to benefit all parties. The researchers would share their findings with the galactic community under strict guidelines to protect Veridia 9's sovereignty and environmental integrity. In exchange, the indigenous leaders would continue to engage in cultural exchanges, fostering a deeper understanding and appreciation between the species. As the mission concluded, Vara and Milo stood together, watching the Admiral's ship ascend into the starlit sky. They felt a profound connection to Veridia 9, forever changed by their experiences. "We started this as survivors from a forgotten wreck," Milo reflected, his voice mixed with wonder and contentment. "And now look at us, diplomats, explorers, part of something much bigger." Vara nodded, her gaze lingering on the horizon where the ship had disappeared. "It's the end of our mission, but it feels like the beginning of something new, something right. We've set an example here, one I hope will resonate across the stars." They turned back to the camp, where their teams were celebrating the successful end of their expedition. Laughter and music filled the air, a sound as vital as the life that thrummed through the jungle around them. Vara and Milo joined the celebration, their hearts light, their spirits uplifted by the knowledge that they had not only explored a new world, but had also laid the groundwork for a future where exploration and respect walked hand in hand. As the night deepened, the stars above Veridia 9 seemed to shine a little brighter, a silent witness to the dawn of a new era in interstellar relations.